On the phone.
You. Kelly Conlon. Here. Brian Greenberg.
Here.
Richard Anderson. Brian LaFleur.
Here.
Kimberly Beatty.
On WebEx.
Michael Volk.
Here.
Alan Turner.
Here.
Anthony Tripp. Juan Figueroa.
Here.
Michael Soretto.
Okay. All set?
Yep.
All right, everyone should have received a copy of the October 25th SIEC board meeting minutes. Any questions or corrections? I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes from the previous SIEC board meeting.
So moved.
Brian LaFleur, motion, seconded by Sheriff. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Everyone should have received a copy of the draft agenda for today's SIEC board meeting, which has been placed at your seat. Are there any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda for the meeting. Ryan, motion, seconded.
Good Morris.
Tim Morris, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Before I introduce the committees and working groups.
Focus on the line.
Sorry, I'm just going to advance the slide. Okay, before I introduce the committees and working groups for reports, I'd like to propose some new administrative functions for the committees. I'm requesting that all committees and working groups have a chairperson, a co-chair or vice chair, a secretary, and a mission statement. This is going to help us ensure efficiency and longevity of the committees and the working groups. Once this information has been determined, please make sure you send a copy to Heather Fear for our files and our records here. It's a good opportunity for the committees and working groups to also update their membership lists. In the coming year, the committees and working groups will be assigned various tasks. One task I'd like to start the new year off with is drafting some guidelines in their respective areas. For example, the 911 Advisory Committee should start looking at what guidelines would be good for us to put out for the 911 community. NG 911 Working Group, NG 911 guidelines, and for GIS, the GIS guidelines. I think this is a good start. We know that NG 911 is going to be a huge project moving forward. There's a lot of moving parts to it, so I think this would be a great start to get things moving. Once we have the guidelines in final draft format, the committees and working groups can share these at the SIEC board meetings during their presentations. So with that, we'll start off with the 911 Advisory Committee. Turner.
As everybody can see, there was a draft copy of the proposed standards. We're getting very close to getting these approved. I'd like everybody to look it over at your convenience, and we will have a meeting of the committee members to finalize it. And our goal is to vote on it at the May meeting. We've done a good job of it in the past, and thanks to Mr. Callahan for reviewing it. Any questions?
So I was going to bring it up under new, but we might as well tackle it now. So I want to thank Alan and the 911 Advisory Committee for all the work that they put in this. It's been a while since we've, started this process, but now everything is moving forward, and we appreciate all the time and effort that this committee put in to these standards. This is a final draft format for the board, so if you could take a look, and from now until May's meeting, if you have any questions, concerns, anything with the standards, contact our office and we'll go through it. I'd like to have a final draft ready for vote at the May meeting. So from now until May, we'll tackle anything that anybody wants to discuss on the standards. I'd also like to ask Jim if you wouldn't mind going over the process from there.
All right, so the rulemaking process for adopting new standards is exempt from the usual set of rules, the State Administrative Procedure Act. So the procedure for this board comes from County Law Section 327. So what you have before you is essentially a draft revised set of standards, of proposed set of PSAP standards. This We're asking that you all take a look at them. This gives a chance for both the 911 Advisory Committee and also all the board members to look at them, raise any concerns they have to OIEC. The next step in adopting these as final would be having the full board adopt them as the board's proposed standards. That starts a public comment period on the standards. So for the public comment period, the standards need to be published in appropriate publications as determined by the board and OIEC, which includes at a minimum the DHSES website and the state register. If you're not aware what the state register is, that is an official state publication produced by the New York Department of State for rulemaking notices and other official announcements. It takes at least 2 weeks to get things published in there, so there's a bit of delay from that. So once we have it all published, that starts the public comment period, which has to run for at least 45 days. During that public comment period, the board is to receive and consider public comments on the proposed standards before adopting final standards. The comments are going to be received and collected by DHSES OIEC in practice. So after the comment period, the board will have an opportunity to decide whether the proposed standards should be revised in light of any public comments or any other concerns raised by board members or the committee. Minor revisions for clarity are relatively common, but if we end up needing to make significant rewrites, we might need to do a second public comment period just so the public actually knows what we're going to be adopting. But if we have a set of standards that we like, have a comment period, then the board can adopt the proposed standards as their final standards. And upon final adoption, standards are then published again in the DHSES website, the state register, appropriate publications, and then the new standards become binding. So it takes a few months, a few steps, but relatively simple process.
Thanks, Jim. Any questions for Jim? Okay, thank you very much, Jim. All right, we'll move on to the NG911 working group, Mr. Glasser.
Yeah, advance it one more, please. So the NG working group, we met last week on the 10th. We had 13 members in attendance, which is pretty good. So a couple of things that we talked about. I did provide an update on the status of the New York State and the NG 911 plan. We are working on the plan. We have re-engaged our consultant. We're actually meeting with them next week. We also are waiting on the RFI, but while we're waiting on the RFI, there's a few things that we can do. Jason Baum is also in the meeting. He will report on his committee, but he gave us a report on his committee for us. Then we had a couple discussions amongst the group, and one of the things that we talked about was a PSAP readiness survey and the need for it and the timeliness of it. There are a few things that we know we're going to need in NG, regardless of when the RFI comes out or the RFP. We know we're going to need certain things. We know we're going to need GIS. We know we're going to need PSAP readiness surveys. So we're starting to work on that. We had a lengthy discussion amongst the group. And then we also talked about the improved accuracy of the information. It's so important that when we ask you for this information for the PSAPs, that we get it in a timely manner and that it's accurate. And sometimes we get numbers that are different. So we had a discussion about that. The group also recommended to me that we get another state's NG coordinator or PSAP coordinator on the phone so we can have a lessons learned call. I have had discussions with numerous states. I've talked to Budge from California. I've talked to Pokey from North Carolina. So we're going to get them on the call, maybe the next call we have, and just go over lessons learned and kind of pick their brain. So that's kind of where we're at. We're just still waiting on a few things, and then our next meeting is May 8th, but I assume we'll probably have a meeting before that. So that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. We'll roll right into the GIS working group. Jason, is Steve on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Jason, you doing the report?
Yeah, I'll do the report.
All right.
So we've had 3 meetings since the last SIEC board meeting. The average attendance has been 13 members. In summary, the director explained the status of the Next Gen 911 plan and thanked the group for its support. Paul Glasser, chair of the Next Gen 911 working group, reported on the efforts of that group. I reported on the last board meeting and provided an org chart showing where the GIS working group is in relation to the board and the state. Tony Goyer from New York State ITS summarized various relevant NENA documents to the group, including the Next Gen 911 GIS data stewardship document. Craig Fargione, New York State ITS of the SAM program, updated the group on the status of counties using the streets and address environment for updating their SAM data. Steve Carr on the line explained to the group New York City's efforts in deploying Next Gen 911 and the criticality of GIS data for Next Gen 911. Counties continue to discuss their Next Gen 911 status and GIS issues relative to public safety, and the state has been well represented at the meetings.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for either Paul or Jason? Okay. State Agency Communications Committee, Mr. Delaney.
Morning. We had a meeting last week. Throughout last year's meetings, every state agency had an opportunity to present on their communications, their current networks, capabilities, and needs. Building on that, starting in the meeting this year, we started to talk about what we're going to do going forward. We had a couple of discussions, one of which is we had previously started to develop a state agency response communications plan such that multiple state agencies arrive at an incident. They have a common communications plan until a larger plan can be established. So we're going to try to wrap that up this first half of this year. We also had a good discussion with our ITS, State Information Technology Services, about IT support for various communications networks. And we're going to just continue to work on those things.
Matt, any questions for Matt? Okay, Citizens of Learning, Matt Delaney.
Thank you. Citizens Alerting, we do have, I'm the chair, we have a vice chair, plus a Nussbaum from State Emergency Management. We had a good presentation at our meeting last week. State OEM demoed the message design dashboard, which is a tool that allows you to craft your emergency alert messages, for example, your wireless emergency alerts ahead of time, where you can create a template and then fill in the details just in time when you need to fill in the end date or the location, but you've worked out all the other language already such that you're not trying to craft a message from scratch during an emergency. We also talked about alerting on behalf. There's actually sort of two components. One is to ensure that you have the opportunity to have, let's say, a neighboring jurisdiction send an emergency alert on your behalf, but also an opportunity for FEMA, the IPAWS Technical Support Center, to be able to send an emergency alert for your jurisdiction. If you are unable to, if your systems are down, you're unable to have a neighboring jurisdiction do it or the state do it, there is a process to authenticate yourself with FEMA, and FEMA can send that alert for you. We're going to continue to message that out to our various alerting authorities in New York to make sure they avail themselves of those opportunities. We also discussed having additional groups represented, that we want to make sure emergency alerting is more than just public safety. It needs to go to the general public. There are certain groups, for example, hard of hearing, who may have trouble receiving emergency alerts. We need to make sure they're involved. Those who do not have cell phones, groups that choose not to use technology, need to make sure they can receive emergency alerts, especially going forward as we move into more of wireless emergency alerts and technology-based alerts, that there's still opportunities to make sure that other groups can receive them. We did update our mission statement and our vision statements, and we circulated those through the group. And we are also going to work on outreach of existing plans. There's a number of existing plans. There's a state emergency alert system plan maintained in combination with the State Broadcasters Association. State OEM has an emergency alerting annex. So we need to make sure that those who need to know about those plans are aware of them and communicate when those plans are updated. Questions? Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, that's it for the committees and working groups. I'll entertain a motion to accept committee reports.
Turner, make a motion.
Alan Turner made a motion, seconded. Jeff Nutting, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right, program updates. First one will be Phil McHugh on grants.
All right, everyone look forward to the grant discussion. So for the 23 PSAP and SIG formula, they have both been awarded and we're going through those budgets now. The 23 targeted is being processed currently, and we're hoping to have that out soon. Next slide. The 24s are still being worked on with the updates, and if you guys want to read through these, I'll go over them kind of at a high level. Given groups as this and our C3 and our other partners throughout the state, we've listened to a lot of the suggestions that you've put forward when we are trying to incorporate those into future grant releases. We are going to be asking for some supporting material as far as such as call volume to provide your printout so that we can review that against the numbers that are being reported within the applications. There is going to be a technical guide that will be a step-by-step for every portion of the application that you fill out. What we're trying to do here is alleviate any confusion and establish consistency across all the applications. The scoring is going to change a little bit which is then going to change some of the award amounts. So just be forewarned about that there might be some variation into prior awards that you've received in the past. Next slide. The 24 targeted grant, again, still being worked on. We're looking at permissible, non-permissibles. There will be a technical guide with this as well to bring you through the application step by step. That is a work in progress, so there might be some foreseen issues with that, some things that maybe we're trying to convey one way or the other, so we'll appreciate feedback on that going forward. It's not going to be perfect the first go around, we understand that, but again, we're trying to establish consistency with the answers. So we're hoping that this technical guide or instructional guide will help better understand the answers that we're looking for within the application. And once again, there will be some scoring changes which may, well, adjust some of the award amounts going forward. Next slide. Additional funding, really for you, but I think the 20 million for the next gen 911. You guys are all aware. We're exploring the options through that. Hoping to have some answers for you soon. Next slide. Our ComU program. We've taken a lot into consideration with this, a lot of feedback that we've gotten from both regional workshops, the actual classes itself, our exercises. So here's kind of the first half of this coming year. A lot of these were based upon feedback. We also looked at the registrations and the numbers of requests we got for different courses, and we established that this would be the best fit. If there are suggestions going forward, please let us know throughout the year. We will do our best to accommodate. However, it'll be within availability of our staff and open dates. Next slide. Second half of the year here. One of the big highlights that we're going to task book days. One of the things that we found is it's very difficult for people to get their task book signed off to get a credential in a certain area. So we're trying to put out regional task book days, which we've surveyed to see what people are looking for, which task books they want to work on. So we're going to see how that works out this year. If anyone has any questions, please email the oic.training@dshs.ny.gov or myself or Julie. Next slide. That's kind of what this says here. Next slide. Back to you.
Any question for Phil on the grants or communications unit? Well, you're here. Do you have anything you wanted to add to the grants?
I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so Jill had mentioned the SICG and 2023 targeted awards. So those are actually going to be signed by the end today. So they should be going out within the next day or two.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll move on to the 911 program. Mr. Glasser.
Hello again. So again, like I said, in the NG portion of this, some of the things that we have been working on are the state plan. It's kind of been my focus. I do have a punch list, if you will, from our consultant that I've been going through and working with them on. That meeting is again next week, like I said earlier. So that's kind of where I'm focused right now with the plan. As far as the updated standards, you all know they're out there, so you have a copy of them. Still working on the PSAP central resource, if you will. Like I said previously, we ask so many surveys and we ask for so much information. It would be nice to have a place where PSAPs could go and just enter that information, after January 1st or whatever the date would be. So I've been kind of working with that. I do have some information again from our consultant. I've been working through that, looking at other counties, not to mention them, but Pennsylvania has a really nice PSAP portal that they use. It gives a place for PSAPs to go. So we're just not beating them up with all the surveys that we ask. And that's pretty much where we're at. Thanks.
Get another slide.
Hello again.
I looked at the sheet.
Okay, all that information I already said under NG, so the big thing is the RFI. Hopefully we'll see some information on that shortly. Is there another slide or can I sit down?
I think you're good. I think you're
Can I
good.
do this for you too, or?
Okay. Any questions for Paul? As we said before, it's a huge project. There's a lot of moving parts. It is moving forward in every aspect. We've tried to accomplish that over the last year. And we think that the the increase in communications between our state partners, our federal partners, and our counties, and getting this working groups and committees and the board more active is all in a positive effort forward. So there'll be a lot of stuff coming over this year, this current year, and we appreciate everybody's help and support with all of that. So other updates and reports, Mr. Smith, you're on the phone for the C3 chair report.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Last night we had the C3 meeting. There was 100% attendance, very good conversations and interactions related to unique problems that this different consortiums are seeing, reference utilities, interop use, other challenges that we face and potential solutions. Additionally, there was a discussion regarding how the consortium chairs can assist the director and his staff in getting information out of the counties and importance of completing surveys and being timely with a response to the director and staff. There was a lengthy discussion regarding the librarian project and how to share information with that. The office is going to be providing us some examples of levels of approval to share with the other counties so we can get that resolved, and all that useful information that is available in the librarian project actually gets used readily by the different counties. Other than that, we look forward to our next meeting in May, and hope everybody stays warm.
Thanks, Dana. Any questions for Dana? Okay, Mr. Kopstein, the SafeCom report.
Director, first I would ask if you would recognize Chris Tuttle.
I'm going to do that next. We're going to add it on, so go ahead with your.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Unfortunately, my report's going to be somewhat lengthy, as it usually is. First, we're working on a 911 cybersecurity resource hub that will be available once CISA approves the URL. The issue is going to be who has access to it. That determination will come down once CISA approves the URL. For the
This meeting
where
is
we may
being
have to get
recorded.
communications up there in a hurry so that disparate response agencies can talk to one another. One of the issues of discussion was the definition of sustainment in grants. Are we sustaining equipment or are we sustaining the actual service? And there's a difference. That's under discussion. For Phil and the people in the training unit, how many people know what the ICT is under new NIMS and ICS and the units that are under it? Who here hasn't heard the term ICT? Well, that's wonderful. Everybody's heard, all right, Alan? I'm glad everybody else knows what it is. Anybody want to volunteer? I didn't think so. Information and communications technology. That's going to be the branch over ITSL and COML. I'm glad people are informed about it. ORGSCOM is being pushed heavily on OIEC part. Matt, you have been designated as the contact. Your name and contact information have been submitted. There is talk of a national instructor conference for all communications unit credentialed instructors. There's the funding issues, but that's being looked at right now. We're also differentiating the response between a cyber incident and support to a cyber incident. What if the incident has occurred and what are the feds going to do? And what if the incident is occurring and what is the federal response to it? That's being differentiated and something will be out on that shortly. S&T and Sister Safecom are looking at location-based services on 5G. Those are projects in place right now. We had a presentation on AI. AI is a big concern. It's going to be a problem. We've got to get out in front of it. So that's something to put in your wheelhouse. In getting wireless equipment in from the mainland. However, Starlink was deployed and it worked very well. Better than the low orbiting satellites and the geosynchronous satellites that we've had in the past. So it's something we ought to be looking at as far as Starlink goes. Link layer encryption and link layer authorization is being worked on continuously. Something should be out hopefully this year on strengthening. As some of you were aware, some of the encryption algorithms were recently hacked. Director, I think I sent up to you a piece on it.
We forwarded it on.
Some agencies have decided to use Zello as a means of backup communications. That's for information. 4.9 is still an issue in discussion. FirstNet. And Dave, I don't want to steal any of your thunder, but what we've been told is AT&T is going to reinvest all profits from user fees into further advancing the system. Is that correct, David?
That's the rumor.
And that there are now 5.3 million connections,
Roughly, yes.
and the FirstNet core is going to be expanded to include 5G.
Correct. That's already started.
Pardon?
That has already started that implementation.
We have certain issues with GPS. It's open source information that over parts of Europe and parts of the Middle East, GPS has been played with. It's not giving accurate location information. Could it be expanded? Yes. It could screw up location-based services. It could screw up simulcasting. Anything that we're relying on satellite communications for synchronous timing could be impacted. Certain airlines are now backing GPS up using Galileo, which is a European standard. And of course, some of our unfriendlies over in the Middle East and in Europe, Asia, are playing with Galileo as well. There are other GPS issues that I would prefer to discuss with staff, not in public conference. So if we have a little bit of time after this and the like, I don't want to.
Sure.
All right. And last but not least, Phil, you're not going to be happy. We are in the process of rewriting all of the ComU curriculum. ComL, ComT, all of the subunits, including ComC, which is not officially anywhere, and the like. We're doing it now. We just, within committee, we just did comments on the curriculum in the first draft. EMI has bought into it. Stranger things but have happened, but FEMA is being cooperative. So hopefully, we're going to see a draft that's going to go out for greater comment before the end of the year. But the entire curriculum is going to be rewritten. Something you might want to, that you can include right now is a COML as a leader, as a manager. He's managing or she's managing resources as well as personnel. The incident message system and that ICM manager is also managing resources and personnel. We're going to be moving more towards management, risk management, and et cetera, on the part of the leadership within ICT. That's a branch. Now, for those who are familiar with the incident command system in NIMS, the incident commander has the absolute authority, when necessary, to make a branch a section. That should be part of what we're being taught. We're getting more and more reliant on data and what communications and ITSL can do, including all of the different drones that are out there that Director, your office uses at all of the events. That's data. The cameras that may be monitored is data. That all should be part of our training system. Be more than happy to answer any questions and anything else that you might want to throw at Mr. Tuttle.
Any questions for Jay? I have one. I don't know if you can answer. Did they approve the updates to the org chart for ComU with the separate?
Yes. That functional guidance is out there.
Could you get us a copy of what the updated org chart that's approved is?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Unless Chris has got it. Where's Mr. Tuttle?
Oh. Yeah, Jay, send it to me, if you don't mind, please.
I will get it for you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Jay?
About 5 more years.
Okay. One thing is not on your agenda, but it's going to be on any future agendas, is when our federal partners are here. I'm going to ask them if they have any updates for us. So I'll start off with Chris Tuttle from ECD. I apologize for putting you guys on the spot.
No, fine. Thank you, Director. So start with the big topic first. One is recently, I should say recently, over the last year, New York State counties have seen an uptick in 911 spoofing on 10-digit numbers. You can use spoofing, you can use denial of service, you can use phishing, however you want to utilize it. But basically, it's using a 10-digit number that's appearing as another PSAP or another government agency on caller ID. And when they pick up, it's actually the two PSAPs connected, thinking they called one another. That's creating confusion. So like I said, it's 10-digit lines, not the 911 trunk, but alarm companies, medical devices, et cetera, calling 10-digit lines, tying it up creates an issue. In some cases, it's 1 or 2 calls. In some cases, we see multiple calls, bringing down that number for a period of time. On the federal level, the term swatting has been the one that takes everyone's attention over the last several years, but this one's becoming more prevalent. Swatting is still occurring, as we all know, and it gets the headlines, but this is becoming more of a challenge technically to identify and to address. But also, there's a lack of urgency on the federal level, understanding how large scale of an issue this is. In late November, DHS Science and Technology held a meeting to discuss some research with Oak Ridge National Laboratories and looking into swatting. And we added the spoofing part to it as well. They were unaware how involved and how broad this was starting to get. This came up at a national ComISAC call 2 weeks ago, where it started getting a lot of interest from the communications industry and being involved in this as well, and looking into it, understanding the problem, trying to find a solution. With all that being said, the reason why I bring it up is it's extremely important, no matter how minuscule you think an incident is in your PSAP, reported to local IEC or documentation at the state level and then provided to me. The more we continue to paint the picture, the more nationally other states will start to report, and the federal government will understand what a major issue this is. We'll start to get some more involvement from our telecommunications providers. We've had really good input so far, and a lot of hands raised to want to be involved and be part of this, but until we can start to really get that bigger picture for them, it's going to be difficult to get money, time, and resources allocated to it. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to ask Josh to jump in here as well. Josh Green, my FEMA Region 2 counterpart from Disaster Communications. Jay brought up the federal government looking at cybersecurity as an emergency and what that means for federal resources. It's not likely here. I think we both have to play above our pay grade. So the federal government to get involved in a response, it has to meet the Stafford Act definitions, which is federal declaration of an emergency, which then opens up certain funding streams, categories, et cetera. If you think of the frequency of cyber attacks occurring in America, both at a local level, a corporate level, et cetera, the threshold would have to be very clearly defined. I'm not really sure that can be done for the simple fact of trying to project losses to instill federal recovery dollars is extremely difficult at the start of an incident. Whereas you have a hurricane hit, you know it's taken X, Y, and Z down. It's much easier to do a damage assessment and say, this is how much it's going to cost to get us back to where we were. Further, where do you stop? If you help agency A for their cyber attack, and then agencies B through Z have the same cyber attack the next day, we're going to exhaust federal resources and federal money and our normal natural hazards that occur that the federal government assists with. This is being driven. I'll strike that from the record. Not to say, but it's a slippery slope is what it really comes down to. It really is. I know we've had this discussion for years, and the federal government, quite honestly, is a support role in a cyber attack. We are not a response agency in cyber. We don't have a lead in cyber once it occurs. We're advisors. We try to help you plan and prepare when it does occur with you. And if you read some of the larger cyber attacks throughout corporate America and even the government, 9 times out of 10, there is a legal piece to this that gets involved to discuss ransomware, for example, and the money or crypto to recover your systems to get back to normal. So with all that being said, the biggest thing is be prepared, utilize the resources that are available to you, have some good cyber hygiene. I've said this for like 2 years now, the county specifically where you have your school system, your government, your public safety all on the same server, on the same domain. Make sure there's firewalls between the agencies. Make sure your personnel have good cyber awareness training. Because all it's going to take is, Board of Education secretary opening up an email that all of a sudden affects the entire server for the entire county or a city or things of that nature. So that's really all I got on that piece. And the last piece is for me, for my report that I was not prepared to give. Under the ComU, working with OIAC, great dialogue this year on identifying the priorities and needs for technical assistance. The TA request did go in prior to the new year, and with the current federal funding challenges, we were able to bump most of New York's to high priority. I was able to stovepipe where the money's coming from. For those who are familiar with the DHS Emergency Communications Technical Assistance Program, it's primarily one pot of money, and now we have 3 pots of money. We have the traditional technical assistance that everyone's aware of, that the ComU program in New York has benefited from and blossomed from, to become basically a leader in the nation. Then we have a new program, which is Cyber Resilient 911, CR 911. Anything 911 related, we could use the same TA catalog and separate pot of money we can apply to that, which we did in some of the requests. And the final one is a rural EMS program, which I have to talk to you afterwards. So any rural EMS agency, county, city is available for the same TA technical assistance in the catalog to apply just to rural EMS agencies or rural EMS programs, to include dispatch, guidelines, procedures, ComL or ComT just for EMS, things of that nature. So the federal government's made things a little bit more challenging, but at the same time, it's broadened its scope on what we can use the money applying it to. Finally, well, I said finally a few minutes ago, I want to say thank you to all the members, both here and on the phone, that participated in this skip process late last year, both virtual and the in-person in December. Great dialogue, really good ideas and some strategic thinking for the way ahead for New York State's Emergency Communications Program. So thank you very much for that. And Director, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Director? To add to what Chris is saying, though I don't send it out here, but this is communications. HISN, for those people who want to log on, has a tremendous amount of cyber data available on it. Alerts, especially in the health community, ransomware and the like. I would strongly suggest if you've got a cyber incident response, or you've got a concern, send a request through the director to have his in access, or you can look at it. SafeCom also sends out alerts on hacking specific to communications. I send those up to you. So join his in. I know logging in can be a pain in the neck sometimes, but they've got some valuable data on it.
Thanks, Jay. Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff Newting. I don't know who would address this, but it occurred to me that in the same way that multi-factor authentication is validating, communication, email communication, different things like that, systems, VPN access, is there any equivalent way to multi-factor authenticate phone calls that are spoofing or pretending to come from a valid, recognized phone number, like in the case of the 911 or the PSAPs, that it would occur to me that just by, that's a number I know, my phone even tells me that's saying it's so-and-so, but that can be imitated. So I'm just curious if there's any from telephone or radio communications, any aspect of an additional way to validate other than that's a number I know.
I don't know the answer to that. That's a great question. I will bring that back to the ComISAC. What we found from the data so far is when the carriers look at the full logs, they can't trace it back. That's the biggest challenge. So a lot of times the carriers, I don't want to say, they're not throwing their hands up saying we can't help you, but they're just as much confused as the end user.
Well, I'm even thinking at the point of at the point of receipt of a call, if there's any need when you think you have, PSAP to PSAP communication or other official government to official government communication, if there's any equivalent or analogous way of validating that the number that's presenting itself is in fact, like a check mark on X or, something like that to validate that's who this person really is calling from this number, as opposed to these texts that come in from a spoofed phone number.
Right. So almost like an identifier at the lead of the start of the number.
That's correct.
Yeah. I got you. I'm tracking. Great question. Let me bring that back to the ComISAC on Monday and ask the question. But Jay has got his hand up.
There is, Director, may I? There is one thing that the telcos can do and are doing to try to inhibit some of the robocalls, is they're calling back the number that's appearing to see if they get a busy signal. So if the number that shows up on you, they call back that number and it rings, they know it's a spoofed number. But it can't be used on the 800 type services and the IP-based services. That's where the problem is.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Jeff? Chris? Any questions for Chris? Paul?
Actually, I had something to add on that.
Yeah, there are other firms too that can provide, appliances in that space, kind of analogous to a firewall in a traditional IP environment. They make them for the telephony world that will whitelist those kind of attacks and those kind of numbers. So there are other, remediation efforts out there that you can leverage.
And I think a few meetings ago, we talked about how important cyber is going to be in a lot of what we're doing. So we'll have offline discussions on this topic, and we'll certainly share with the group whatever we discover. But I also think maybe it's a good thing to, maybe we'll have a good cyber presentation at one of our future SIEC board meetings and really get into some of this topic. So any other questions for Chris? Chris, thank you. Josh Green from FEMA, do you have anything you'd like to share?
My stuff's not as sexy and cyber. FEMA Region 2 is the 2003 year was a little bit slower for communications. It was nice. We didn't have a hurricane in the Caribbean or up here that was a direct hit. So we're going back to do a lot of housekeeping. I run the REPWIG, the Regional Emergency Communications Working Group for Region 2. We're going to go back to basics and do a lot of housekeeping this year. We're going to do this new charter, officially have members signed up and such. You'll see a lot of those emails coming through. And then I want to plug, there's gonna be a national alerts and warnings meeting like we had last year in Kansas City. Although it is a CISA sponsored, FEMA's heavily involved in it. And this year I got a speaking role, I got a presentation for it and everything. So I'm excited to get out to Dallas. Hopefully somebody in Dallas in April, that email will come out. It's really getting down to the nuts and bolts of alerts and warnings. Last year was a really good meeting. We're looking to double the attendance for this year, and there's some money involved in there somewhere for states to be involved. And then we have the ESF2 conference, the spring workshop. ESF2 is happening in Denver in April. Although we get a lot of federal participation, we're working to get the states involved, working to get a pot of money for the states. But everyone needs to know that it's happening, and it can also be virtual if you guys want to call into it. And we're really drilling down and getting lifelines. All the Region 2 states have adopted lifelines for their one of their reporting matrices, and we're pushing more and more on the ESF2 side of the house to get that information out. And it's definitely not going anywhere. We're making really good progress. So we're going to continue to push that stuff out. And then finally, the Region 2 REC working group, we bounce back and forth between Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, New York, New Jersey. This year is going to be in, it's going to be in May, in April, May in the Virgin Islands. We don't know which island yet, probably the week of the 13th. Still working on details. As of right now, I don't have a travel budget for invitational travel, but I'm meeting with my bosses every day. We're going to try to co-locate. Maybe there might be a possibility to have a SAFECOM meeting for planning exercises, along with some other stuff happening in the island, and really bring attention to the Virgin Islands. They're getting a brand new $200 million LMR network that we want to show off and look at, and hopefully they'll make progress on it by then. But lots of good stuff happening in the region, and just want to plug ESF2 where I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Any questions for Josh? Okay. Mr. Cook, I know Jake stole most of your stuff.
No, not at all. Director, thank you. I too am not prepared to give a report, so this will be fun. As Jay mentioned, there's over 5 million connections now, and there's 700 to 750 kinds of devices that have been approved on the FirstNet network. So just about anything you can think of is now authorized. We're working towards developing coverage solutions for offshore, like off the Great Lakes or the New York Harbor or the Atlantic Coast, areas where when you get outside the land mobile radio network, we can still try to pick up some of our offshore cellular for rescue operations in the marine world. We continue to develop new ideas for equipment. We have something known as a mini compact rapid deployable. They're developing push to talk over cellular. And cyber was a topic of discussion earlier. We have helped out some counties that had ransomware attacks that brought down the communications completely. And if you get into a condition like that, where all of a sudden you have no communications, AT&T and FirstNet can give you devices, some push-to-talk devices or phones or things like that that will work on an independent network, so you can at least communicate, so you get your problems solved. We have a new director. His name is Joe Wassel. He comes from Military Affairs, DMA, and he was in charge of satellite communications for the military. He was actually working in the Pentagon on 9/11 and actually carried stretchers. So communications is near and dear to his heart, and emergency responders are something that he reminds us of every single day. He's working because he's from a federal background to improve our relationships, communications, and coordination with our other federal partners. So the gentleman on the other side of the room, at our next meeting, the three of us will be sitting together. And the last thing is, we're working for remote dispatching. Some of the counties have developed remote dispatching. It happened out of COVID, where you can take your 911 centers, send your people home, and they can communicate directly from home. They're also using FirstNet now to back up 911 routing. The last thing, I just said that was the last thing. This is the last thing. See what happens when I'm not prepared. Is we invest in the network constantly. Our next round of investments is going to go towards coverage, but the problem is do we put it in areas that are remote, that don't have a lot of coverage, or do we put it in the subways in New York City where millions of people are getting transported every day? So we're going to be reaching out to your office for discussions on New York State, do the same in New Jersey and other Region 2 areas, to identify priority locations, and then the priority reasons so that we can figure out nationwide where to put our money to best help public safety going forward with data communications. And thank you, Mark. Appreciate the opportunity.
Anybody questions for FirstNet, Mr. Cook? I apologize to our federal partners. It will be on all future agendas, so you can be prepared to give reports. I don't know how I missed it, but I think it's very valuable that we do that. So thank you, everybody. And thanks, Ken, for that information. Okay, on to old business. Any old business? One thing we had under old was, I believe Mr. Soretto brought it up initially a couple meetings ago. There was some discussion on vendors approaching school districts with special applications for the school districts and selling it, and how they don't really have any discussions or include the counties in a lot of this, but yet they expect, I think, to connect back to the counties with these applications. We have been meeting on a, I think, monthly basis with New York City OTI. As most folks know, they are almost into their last phase of implementing NG 911 down there. So we've been having quite a few discussions. This came up. They've been looking at different applications. So I just wanted to bring it up so that Mr. Soretto and others are aware that we are looking at things that are brought up at this meeting, and we should have some information in the very near future on it. For now, I mean, I think we all agree, the school districts need to keep us involved in the process if they can. And we don't have anything current as far as what applications are best, but we'll have more information on this in the future for everybody. So, Chair recognizes Mark Hazardak, President of the 911 Coordinator.
Director, this is just a recent discussion on the 911 coordinators listserv, and it's a concern not only the vendors approaching the schools and not involving the counties, but the additional concern from the 911 coordinators is that multiple vendors could potentially be in a single county with multiple school districts.
Right.
And a one-stop shop would be much more advantageous to the 911 crew.
Yeah. I know, Mr. Barbera, you're on the phone. Would you be interested in discussing what we've talked about on this? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but why not? I'm putting everybody else on the spot.
I do believe New York City did reply that they actually have a test lab where they're testing these, correct?
Are you still on the phone? Is he still on the phone?
He wasn't until I asked him.
I do not see him.
Okay. Well, there's going to be a lot more coming on this. Just know that we've identified it as an issue. And we are currently working on some solutions. I think that may be one of those guidelines that we probably would be looking at. And of course, we'll include our C3 and 911 coordinators partners as well in a lot of these discussions. So, yes.
You have two OTI gents, maybe they can.
Yeah, I don't know if were you guys involved in that or?
Actually, were you briefed? I'm not sure. I was just, it's like, not.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, it came up on our call, so.
Yeah, there's several several weapons detections, pattern, type things, panic buttons and several companies have come and, we're looking at a bunch of them, but that's about all I have.
Okay, so we'll have more on this in the future. I just wanted to make sure everybody's aware it's something on our radar. Any other old business?
Mark, if I just add to that, we've had some conversation from the spatial component because, as was just mentioned, the city information, the panic buttons, other things are going to have a spatial component as well. So it all links back to the GIS as well.
Okay, thanks, Steve. All right, hearing no other old, I'll entertain a motion to accept all business. Brian LaFleur, seconded.
Second.
Alan Turner, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Any new business? Alan?
Recently saw in my local paper that there's an assembly bill where an assembly member wants to require all radio communications be unencrypted statewide as a means to allow reporters and the media information. Can you speak on that? Do you know about it?
We're aware of it. We're looking at it. I don't know if there's a Senate bill that accompanies it.
There is, yeah.
So we're keeping an eye on it.
Do you know what?
Matt and I were talking about, let Matt speak to it.
So I think it's actually a Senate bill. There's no companion assembly bill, I think.
Oh, I thought it was something.
But it would, I don't think it, from my understanding of reading of it, it wouldn't prohibit encryption, but it would set up a process. There would have to be a policy in place. You'd have to make it available to credentialed media. The Department of State would have to have a process to credential media. You'd also have to make it available on a delay to the public. So it does, and there are certain things that are allowed to be encrypted, like sensitive communication, tactical, personal information, criminal investigative communication. So it wouldn't necessarily be a complete prohibition on encryption, but it would change the parameters about what could be encrypted or how it could be prevented from the public having access to it. And it really is just a bill. It may or may not, advance or pass.
So we are watching it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other new? Yes.
So it's a ways away, it's more downstate, but in 2026, the FIFA World Cup will be in 11 cities in America. One of them is MetLife Stadium in northern New Jersey, but the anticipation is Manhattan will become the center focal point for the teams, the fan experience, et cetera. The reason why I bring this up is because in looking at this and kind of getting very in front of it, we've also identified it will be occurring at the same time of July 4th in 2026, which is the 250th anniversary of America. And if you look at most major cities already are planning the 250th anniversary for July 4th weekend as major events, including tall ships down in New York City, presidential visits, things of that nature. So beware, start to think, because I know OIAC's got limited resources to go around that weekend. But you need to start to think about and have discussions with your executive leadership in your cities and counties on anything they anticipate to do that might be large scale, bringing people in. And oh, by the way, the eclipse is occurring next year too. So.
World Cup, that's the one that's spectated, or certain events are in New York City, but there's a large portion of it happening in New Jersey?
Yeah, yes.
It's a multi-state in addition to.
It's throughout, yeah, and the other thing is there's two cities currently battling to be the championship city, if you will. And it's between New Jersey and Los Angeles right now. And that's all political.
You got the Ryder Cup coming in down that page too.
The Ryder Cup, well, Matt and I are going to the Ryder Cup, so we're Matt. Yeah.
Yeah, Jay, we're.
Director, at the conclusion of this meeting, I'd like to speak to you offline about this particular issue.
Right, no problem. We were gonna meet anyway, so we'll add that to the. And I wrote it down, retired June 30th, 2020. All right. Anything else under new? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept new business. Motion, Sheriff. Second, Beth, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. For the good of the order, I have one thing. I just want to reiterate the importance of in-person, especially for our SIEC board members. As you know, you can't make a motion or vote on a motion if you're virtual. And it's really important for these meetings to happen. So if you get an email from Heather asking, for an RSVP, please RSVP so we know in advance that we have a quorum. And I know there was some questions regarding the appointments of some individuals that we've been following. We're still working on that. I'm hoping to have that for you all soon too. We realize last minute things happen, emergencies happen, and we'll certainly accommodate, but it's important that we know what numbers we have in advance. So your help on that would be really appreciated. To summarize and close for the day, I just appreciate everyone's support. I think there's a lot of good things that are going to be coming down the road here. Everybody in this room is going to be involved from the side and on the board. We put some things in place to make sure that happens and everybody has a voice. And I think, I'm really looking forward to the future of all the stuff that we do here and the 911 community as well. So I appreciate everybody's support, help, keeping it positive, working the problems together. So thank you, everybody. And at that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ryan, second. Second by Mr. Morris. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, everybody. Yes. It's a line.